It's almost like the Mamluk player could read my thoughts when it came to naval matters, because they are building up 3-deckers like their life depends on it. They already have 35, but they clearly want to be ready if Britain decide that they want to clear the route so that that trade can make it back to Europe safely into their coffers. Asteris is asking, once this game is done, any thoughts on CK2 for the next one? Well, we hope to bring EU4 multiplayer every single Tuesday afternoon, unless we have very good reason not to. That would be like almost everybody is away, or our build is not quite up to scratch, but even then, who's to say? When it comes to CK2 streams though, we may or may not have some stuff in the works there. We may or we may not. Well, that explains why their admin was capped out. The Mamluks player was away. Karsten, aka Forza, extremely accomplished player in this game. They have their fair share of trophies. And although they're in 6th place at the moment, it wouldn't be too surprising if they managed to strike out big and gain another. Since you only have to start getting your victory cards quite late on, as long as you hold on to them for 20 years, things are looking good. Exciting sounds there, but they are simply finally taking down Ajiran, who have been sitting right here all pretty and refusing to develop those provinces, probably as much as the Mamluks were hoping for. The Mamluks will go to war, and at least they'll have something to spend that admin on. Gustav is asking who owns Ryukyu. More than likely Great Britain, but upon closer inspection it is Japan. The Ryukyu core is long gone, but let's see, we have Japan, who is a vassal of Ming. That is pretty hardcore, because I was under the impression that Great Britain had lost some land to the Japanese. I guess not. There were lots of Japanese rebels, but the British appear to have been able to put them down. But with Japan a vassal under Ming, this could be some friction between Britain and China there. I want to double check the alliances that Britain has, and sure enough they've lost all but the most loyal. They've kept it with Portugal. Portugal no doubt having no reason to drop that alliance. I think they've had it since game start. Burgundy, since that was the promise. The big exchange in land was for a near permanent alliance between the two. What else do we have? We got Hungary, who would really take any alliance at this point, and wow! I wasn't aware that this was part of the exchange. Bohemia giving up so much land to Hungary, it almost hurts. But they managed to get a few of their provinces back here. Sadly though, that land, sadly for Hungary that is increased core cost, plus 100% due to Czech nationalism and the nobility. They took aristocratic ideas to discourage anybody chewing on them. So the Central Powers, they looked so powerful, France, Italy, Ottomans and Bohemia together, but in the end, if you bring the whole world and all of its friends against them, they are going to crumble, and for this, new territory has been carved out, but new alliances shall also form, and people with their own ambitions could well be wanting to strike out for that #1 spot, since it looked, for a long time it looked like it will be #1 and 2 for Italy and France. Now we can be almost certain that it won't be. France, having lost all victory cards, is going to fall away quite a way. They're barely gaining any score. Losing those wars really hurt their score intake as well. That's -5.5 on all fronts. I believe that'll tick down. Italy as well. They are suffering. Boy, are they suffering. So yes, we can very much expect Italy to be overtaken by the Mamluks at this rate. The same Mamluks who will be able to get another scorecard in 10 years. And should they take it, Mughals are actually in with a good shot to get #1, if and only if they stab their good friend Bahmanez right between the eyes. I don't think that 56,000 individuals on their own on Delhi are going to do. Delhi is your capital over in Mughals, and it's not even fortified. They clearly do not fear the Bahmani. In fact, if we check out the fort map mode, there are some forts clustered around this area, but only a capital fort on Delhi. And many of these forts here are very outdated. They would crumble to the Bahmani might. The same Bahmani was foregoing a lot of forts, so a coordinated effort against the Indian could bring him down. Funny that Grugi would bring up royal marriages just when I'm wanting to click on the dynastic map mode. The von Habsburg kind of died away in their home. Remember, Italy was formed by Austria, and now they have the Risi on the throne. A very weak legitimacy for the Risi. But von Habsburg's seed spread wide, took over Hungary and Russia, while the Burji are there all over in the Mamluks and the Mughals. Just another nice extra touch for the game to see how far and wide you can spread your dynasty. The de Valois between France and Burgundy. What a shame that they should have to fight over such petty things. Want to have another look at Burgundy. Burgundy still have their 2 victory cards that they will want to pick up. Savoy and Sienne. Then again, they'll need one or the other in order to get their 3rd victory card, and then they'll need to get one more of those in order to get their 4th. So time is running out for that, since it'll take 20 years for one to tick up. The Mughals nestling themselves into a very strong alliance here, despite these permanent claims on India. So if the Mughals were to stab Bahmani, and I'm not saying they would, I'm saying they should, they would certainly be open for a feeding frenzy in India. Couple the minus 25% core cost from having those permanent claims with the Mughal ideas. Let's flip over to them. Here we go. They get a delicious 25% core creation cost right off the bat. They don't appear to have taken administrative ideas, which would be a lovely further 25% off, but honestly they wouldn't need it, since they'll be coming up for even more administrative efficiency. So what I'm saying is Bahmani would be dirt cheap to core. Dirt cheap indeed. Of course, that is relying on Mughals actually breaking that alliance and attacking them. The Bahmani actually lack any nearby friends that could protect them, though. But this is where the diplomacy gets rather complex between the players here. Should Mughals break off with Bahmani and attack them, Bahmani only have the British on their side, and are the British really going to ship over troops to deal with the Mughals when they'll be fighting far, far from the home advantage? But the Mughals also have to consider that the Ottomans spare absolutely no love for them, and would be very, very keen to smack them back a good chunk. This wall of provinces they have between us, it would never last in great war between the two. But then there are the Mamluks. Now the Mamluks are pledging their loyalty to the Mughals, but how far would that loyalty go if the Mughals were to expose themselves by fighting Bahmani, and then the Mamluks could hop in and say, well, actually, I don't like the existence of you in Hormuz, or Basra, or indeed any of your existence. So the Mughals will have to weigh up this diplomatic situation. Now we're being asked when the truce will run out from the last war. France was the war leader there, and if we check it out, it's probably going to be the same across the board here. 45, 45. That's what I'm saying. We can take it with British Cameloso. 1745. I believe it was simply a white peace, but with them giving up provinces later on. Or was it? No, surely not. In any case, it was not a very long truce, so the peace couldn't have been that high. Italy, though, still not giving up provinces. I do wonder how that actually went down. In fact, how about we actually ask them? They may or may not be there to answer, but trying to get some inside information here, because I do like to make an educated guess on how our players do and act, but some things even I can't tell, because Daniel does not appear to have given up much. Okay, there we go. It's subtle, but now that he's told me, I can see it. Both their victory cards were clipped, so there was no great loss of territory, but even this little trim here is going to strip Italy of so many points. See, they're going to not get the 2,000 points from the Slovakian victory card, and they're also going to lose out on the Lower Rhineland victory card. So that's a staggering 5,000 points that Italy isn't going to see unless they wrestle control of both of those away. And the tricky thing is that those victory cards were given to different players. So it's not like he can get them both back in one swift war against one nation. No, he's going to have to fight Hungary and any of Hungary's friends, who'd be very keen to defend them. Or Burgundy and all of Burgundy's friends, which will be Great Britain till the end of time unless Starnan is truly going to stab in the back by saying, well, thanks for everything, Burgundy, but I'm going to keep all this land and you're going to die. That would be a very silly move for Starnan, but it would be very tenacious. Very tenacious indeed. We're being asked why there's no player in Spain. I actually don't know that either. The player Rufo over in Spain did not show up. They were not at their desk and nowhere to be found. Well, France and Italy, you may be down, but you're certainly not out. It will be interesting to see if over the course of the next 80 years in the game they can pull anything back. Their scores are still pretty high. They've accumulated rather a lot. But then again, so have many other players that have done well for themselves. Great Britain themselves having gotten over 5,000 there. But the difference is Great Britain are gaining their victory card points. So there we go. Picardy at the moment is at 62. And at the turn of the month, that is going to bolster itself up a touch. Any moment now. There we go, upwards to 66. So there we go, checking out in total score, Bahmani and Mughals now enjoying number 1 and number 2, whereas we were expecting it to be Italy and France. Now, will Bahmanis and Mughals enjoy number 1 and 2 between themselves, like these very two players did in the previous campaign? And I do wonder if that's going to play into the minds of our other players here, because whilst we have Johan in the Mughals and Jonas in Bahmanes seemingly working together, even exchanging victory cards to maximise each other's score, a very similar thing was done in the previous campaign, where we had Johan over in the Netherlands and we had Jonas in France. The two were inseparable, they were super glued together, and Jonas enjoyed number 1 whilst Johan was going to enjoy number 2 until the largest coalition you ever did see in one of these games attacked, splitting the two apart as France or Jonas decided not to assist, and Johan was left to his ugly fate, which was rather brutal since there was no defeating this enormous coalition of forces. Nonetheless, I believe he secured 3rd place, unless I am completely forgetting, in which case, wow, that'd be bad. But what I'm saying is a similar situation is occurring here, where we have two players that are mutually looking out for each other, even though they could just as easily be mortal enemies. The trouble is, making enemies of each other would suddenly allow the people around them to start nibbling in on the situation, since their diplomacy is not spread as far and wide as perhaps the British are, enjoying a lovely variety of friends, which is why they were able to bring everyone together and bring down Fritily. Somebody is asking who is controlling Burgundy. It's a relatively new addition to the team. It is Martin, but they've given themselves a name, Nivom. I'm not sure if they just mashed on the keyboard for that, or if that's a meaningful name to them. I will have to inquire at a later date and get that answer back to you. Now it seems there's quite a lot of peace in our time, and that is rather understandable at this point, since the previous session was so much war, and then more war. It was it was actually a blast to see, but perhaps not so easy to keep our eyes on at the whole time. So it seems that people are enjoying a relative bit of peace, at least until those truces are up, because we don't know how long they plan on staying all good and friendly between each other. And honestly, that's something I can't even hazard a guess on. Could be that Britain want to very relentlessly attack France, re-establish Burgundy as a great power on the mainland, so that I imagine the two of them are going to be fairly inseparable now after their agreement. I was there during the physical discussions between Great Britain and Burgundy, where Burgundy, well, they had everything to lose on both sides, but it was very difficult to trust Britain, but that trust pulled through. And because of that, I imagine those two are going to be together for the long run. Of course, if we nudge our way over to Burgundy and have a look at their situation, they're keeping their troops over here just to take care of any uprisings here. The separatism, not bad enough, they're not going to have any revolts there. But even with the loss of these provinces here, Burgundy is still really rather rich, enjoying a solid income of 150 each month. That's of course going to pale in comparison to the income of both Bahmani and the Mamluks. If we have a quick look over there when it comes to income, oh baby, Bahmanis and Mamluks, 375, 323. Those are scary levels of income. A good half of that coming in from trade for both of them. Yes, taking down either Bahmanis or the Mamluks would be an astonishing feat, but the Mamluks don't really invite it. Both the players have been rather passive, but the difference is that it's the Bahmanis that are enjoying the extremely high score at the moment. It's also worth poking our nose over to Denmark, because early on they performed poorly and were unable to really keep up the pace from them. Yes, they've secured themselves nicely in northern Germany, but more on the mercy of other powers around them, since they have had their beatings from various people around them, particularly Burgundy, I'll be honest. They managed to get themselves some Stenberg, or Sternberg, like I said, master of butchering names around here. And they don't mind paying that extra coring cost for it, since they have very little to actually spend on coring here. Always living in the shadow of British Scandinavia and enormous Russia. Really, that is a name on the map that you can be proud of. Perhaps a bit more proud if you fill in these blanks here, Grugi. Your 4% war participation shall not be forgotten quickly. Just having another look through the chat. As I say, if you have any questions for us, just tag us at Paradox Interactive. I shall do my my utmost to answer things for you there. Like our question, Epirus was independent in 1444. Not in our game, at least not at the moment. Certainly got Albania there. Now, if you want independent Epirus at the start date, I think EU3 is the game you're looking for there. Now, somebody's cottoned on the Hungarian culture situation. I don't remember the Poles being this widespread, dominating ex-Hungarian lands. So if we jump into the seat of Hungary for a moment, something we haven't often been doing, we can, well, one, take a moment to admire that that incredible General 6 fire at this stage in the game is sufficiently deadly. But they could well be thinking about a certain decision here, because they're doing some culture conversion and it's going to be over in a few years. Yes, they're getting some dominant culture shifted around. We shall see what happens there, because there was a country around here that got eradicated very quickly. Same for Lithuania, but that was manned by Grugi. It was practically destined to happen. Poor man can't take any country without running it into the ground. Russia has gone bankrupt during this campaign, but to Grugi's credit, he didn't really suffer for it. In fact, he cleared all of his loans and was able to get back into prime position fairly quickly. Multiplayer can certainly open the doors to some interesting strategies. But that was possible because he was allied with certain nations that had interest in keeping him alive, and so would defend him if anybody were to take advantage of Russian out-of-morale troops during the bankruptcy. And that's certainly what players would have done if they reckoned they could get away with it, because Russia wouldn't have been able to even put resistance up against Denmark during bankruptcy. So again, it's up to Chains over in Portugal. The only one keeping war going here, thankfully not against glorious Tidor, but instead just mopping up what is left of Brunei. Probably very keen to establish their unquestioned dominance of the Spice Islands. That 99% war score, I'm sure they'll be able to take this, that and whatever, although incredibly, Brunei have a what now? What in the world am I looking at here? There we go. Brunei, of all nations, managed to establish a colonial nation. And I don't think... there we go. No, Portugal... excuse me there. Portugal have been able to ground some troops over here, although these Bruneian Vet Ib Noble Rebels, there's not a phrase you see very often, are trying to make life difficult for them. Did I need a moment of silence there to respect those rebels, or did I need to go and grab a quick drink? You decide. But there we go, the war is finally over. Portugal establishing Portuguese Indonesia and trying to grab all the money they can there. Really rather curious what they're doing with it, because they are transporting that money forward. But I rather think they're going to lose out pretty heavily, since it's essentially just feeding either the Mamluks or Bahmanas. So we got the game paused at the moment. Curious to see what the reason behind that is. Unpaused more or less straight away, so who knows, might have been an accident, might have been to get that perfect screenshot, who's to say. So Syrian R is saying summary of what's happened so far today. For the most, peace has reigned, but we've had the peace deal, which has shown France lose, oh me oh my, the British-Ming Imperial War. I'm afraid the summary is going to have to wait here, because this is not going to look good for Ming. The British have decided that it is high time Ming has got to die, but what can they bring to the table if they're defending against both Ming and Russia? Let's pop over to our correspondent in Great Britain. What are you thinking here? The British-Ming Imperial War with the goal to take the capital of Beijing. Now, Starnan, you might find that a little tricky. A little tricky indeed. Especially with Russia defending. Now here's the thing, Britain, as we all remember, is allied with the Bahmani. There we go, it was a threat. I will bring in the Bahmani and crush you if you don't give it all up. Now why would they go for this? It's because they have their own victory card over in Shandong. Now, it's easy to disregard Great Britain as somebody that would come out in the top 3, simply because they've been an underperformer very often in these multiplayer games. But Starnan, like I said, very accomplished player in StarCraft, also showing off their skills in grand strategy. They want to show that they can fill Wiz's boots quite well in diplomatically winning out here, because really Great Britain in the hands of Starnan has been a flundering disaster on the battlefield. They did attempt to fight over here and they got steamrolled for it, but when they turn to diplomacy they find that they can get things quite a lot easier. So now that they've grabbed their victory card there, Their score is going to tick up by 3,000, and it's already ticking up by a further 1,000. So let's just say they essentially have lots of score. Gonna hide my poor arithmetic there and then. And if we compare the scores after all that, that's going to comfortably put them in second place. And I don't think they would mind being second place to Bachmanes. The same Bachmanes who is gaining so much score, it is terrifying. Remember, the amount of score you generate goes up faster and faster depending on what year we're in. Given that we're in the middle of the 18th century, it is gaining at plus 240%. That's a scary amount. That is a very scary amount. And unless someone comes crashing down on the Bachmanes, the same Bachmanes who are about to integrate the rather chunky Khmer, and are safe on all sides essentially. Ming does not have the power to put down Bachmani here, and the Mughals are nice and friendly, and I think the Portuguese are terrified of them, ever thinking that maybe Bachmanes could cross across this. So I'm actually wondering, where is that trade going? A large chunk of that, actually Portugal is bringing it all over to the Mamluks. And the Mamluks do not appear to be subsidizing them for it, so could there be a great friendship between Portugal and the Mamluks that isn't being documented on paper here? Because the two are not allied. In fact, I hesitate to say it, but there doesn't appear to be any relationship between the two nations. No embargoes even. Could well be that there is a under-the-table alliance here that no one's getting to know about between Portugal and Mamluks. They certainly don't appear to hate each other. They don't have victory cards on each other, with the exception of this one island that I really don't think Portugal is going to cry over losing. 3 development, trading in very unpopular slaves, abolitionism pushing down the cost of slaves to near uselessness, so they might actually benefit from abolishing slavery themselves and trying to get a new, better trade good there. Now, Bruno Boss is asking, has Bachmanes been developing, because they seem awfully strong and they don't even own all of India. Well, what they do own is extremely rich, but let's have a look at it. We check the development map mode, we have, you know, fairly good average of 10 or even above 20 across the board here. As far as development goes, quite a lot of it looking undeveloped. But the reason Bachmanes can be so strong is because they make so much money, and that money can be directly translated into conscription centers to boost that force limit. In fact, we'll probably find that they have conscription centers across the whole country. Let's hop into them. They understand the incredible usefulness of them. We hop over to check out the buildings. Let's say we wanted to add another conscription center. We'll find that the country is full of them. And if we check right here on the military tab, here we go. Those provinces granting 240 force limit. They've taken quantity and they have the Grand Army from it. It just really pushes up that force limit. Conscription centers are the way to go. They're very expensive though, but the reason they can afford that is because they dominate the trade around here. And they're pushing it over to Goa. The Mughals do take quite a chunk out of that, but the Bachmani themselves, they make plenty of money from trade. They do not need to be afraid here. They would be making a lot more money if they could finish off grabbing these Goa provinces, but the Bachmani people are not hurting for money, not in the slightest. So in times of war they can field as large an army as they need, essentially. And Khmer is about to join them in holy matrimony. Their armies, their provinces, all forfeit to the overlord Bachmanes, unless they suddenly declared war, but that's not going to happen. There we go, Bachmanes, terrifyingly powerful, and nobody is going to stop them. Some questions coming in about Hearts of Iron, but a lot of those I can't actually answer at the moment, like, are we going to make it pre-purchasable? That I do not have the scoobiest about. That'd be a question for them over in marketing. Looking at it over here, Italy have managed to get their army back up and on their feet. Now, as I was saying, Italy would never be brought down permanently here. Yes, they got crushed in terms of score, but there is almost 100 years left on the clock. There is, well, maybe that's a bit of an overstatement, but there are 73, I believe. They're not down and out. They still have cores on the lands they lost there, and they still probably really want those Spanish lands back. And unless everybody unites against them again, they could well be... oh my. Something worth noting here is that Spain is only allied with Portugal, so they've dropped all those alliances. Portugal themselves could be attacked by the Fratalians, and unless others came to defend them, then they could win. They have the power to do so. Sadly, it is the French that have really lost a lot of power when this is all they can muster, even with their staggering amount of morale. They just don't have the economy to support it. Remember when we looked over at Burgundy and they were making 150 a month? Well, France also making 150, so I'm pleasantly surprised here. A good chunk of that probably coming in from trade in Genoa. Indeed it is. So spending all that, all those time and points developing those provinces, I say as I click on the least developed provinces that they have, yes, they are making fairly good money off of these. Yeah, as I say, I'm pleasantly surprised by France's income there. Not subsidized either. But will it remain peace, or will they strike out to gain more? Mamluks at war again, but only with Tlemcen. Nothing to get too excited about. And I don't think the Mamluks are scared of some increased core creation cost, because again, if we flip over to them and check out these provinces, it would cost a paltry 78 to core that, and that's 13 development worth. Administrative efficiency can really pile high in that late game. And look, good old Syria, who we might remember from the very start of the game, acting as a defensive wall between Mamluks and Ottomans. A lot of development, yes, to simply hand over to a march, however. Let's not question Forza and their ways, because they've come out on top here. The same Forza who, if I recall, didn't really have much in the way of fortifications. Looking a little more fortified now. Although, if they really wanted to, yep, the Mughals could still slip through that fortification. They would need an extra fort around here. Grugi getting straight to the point. Damn you, Britain, because of you, I am losing score. Now, why could that be, Russia? Why indeed? Personal union on monarch death, we can only hope. Tsar Alexander I, 4% von Habsburg. If you were to kick the bucket early, succession war between Hungary and France. Gotta hand it to everybody in Twitch chat. He really did me proud when Grugi came in and everybody just told him 4%. In case you don't get it, during the Great War, where Russia got a rather disproportionately large amount of provinces, they contributed a staggering 4% to that war. And yes, we can put a number to that with the new war participation mechanic. Can't Mamluks form Arabia or Egypt? I believe we can, and we checked on this earlier, but for whatever reason they are deciding not to. Possibly because it would be a threat towards the Mughals by saying, I now have permanent claims on your land. I wouldn't put it past Forza for taking this into account. Then again, I wouldn't do all that much. Perhaps they just prefer to remain as Mamluks, or they have their own reason. It's tricky for me to say. Perhaps they prefer their absolute monarchy as well. I can't tap into the head of all of our players. For example, why does Daniel want to one-on-one? Perhaps he wants to take Russia on fair terms, and the fun thing is that Daniel and Grugi are two players that would totally do that. Now, Magical Magikarp, if I'm reading the name right, and I'm probably not. Oh, well, forget what you said, because we have Poland back on the map. there we go. Does this mean that our Bachmanis player is going to be forced to return home to their starting country of Poland? Welcome back, Poland. Long live Poland. Oh well, there we go. So if we hop into the boots there, we now have Fido, who was Hungary, now playing as glorious Poland, enjoying those Polish ideas. Clearly wanting to get all that cavalry combat ability. They even have aristocratic ideas to go with that, so we're looking at 10% and another 33% right there. Impressive stuff. They don't want to be remembered for their times as Hungary. They want to be remembered from this day forward for their exploits as Poland. Of course, maybe they will just get partitioned as Poland, perhaps a couple hundred years early, but it's never too early to be partitioning that land. I mean, it's wealthy enough. I believe there's even dyes around here. Come on, game, don't make me sound like a fool now. Ah, see, there we go. Plenty of dyes. Plenty of riches for everybody else to take. Yes, they have the quality on the go as well, so if we check out their 58% cavalry combat ability, I'm pretty sure we can push things even higher, but oh, there we go. Noble Loyalty Act. We could get some even more powerful cavalry. That would make their cavalry punch almost twice as hard. Not so hot for the late game, but still, cavalry is great at demolishing your flanks. So there we go, Austria forming Italy, Hungary forming Poland. Have there been any other formations? England into Great Britain, Muscovy into Russia. We had the Timurids. They formed into the Mughals now. Well, they did that long ago. They spent their time taking all these provinces and burning them to the ground to get a little bit of an edge on the monarch points, but pretty much as soon as they could, they settled into the Mughals. And they've been enjoying these permanent claims for a long time, but not really able to strip them away from the Bachmanis. Hussars OP. I wonder if he's even running with the Polish Hussars. We're still on the polls here. And if we check over in the military, they're actually using Lancers. If they go back, the Hussars are a little bit inferior. Just a little bit. Could always switch to them for flavor, but I think winning comes out on top of flavor in this situation. So all the truces are gone, to do with France and Italy. Spain is sadly protected, although they have also ditched their alliance with Portugal, so they are asking to die. They're also kind of asking for Portugal to die. There's no immediate things to gain from Portugal, but it would be one way to find yourself at war with Great Britain and perhaps grabbing those lands back. The trouble is, if you were to do that, Portugal would simply reach out to Burgundy, and probably Poland as well, saying, hey, do you want to put those 20,000 plus 58% combat ability cavalry to use? And then they'd have a bad time. France begging to form Foix at the moment. Sadly, I think those Foix corps are gone. Denmark could form Scandinavia. We all hope to heavens that they do not, because, ugh, that flag. Better to stick with the Danish flag. So we're going to have a development in just a few months. It is currently August 1749, the year of our Lord, and it's high time we checked out who has 2 of their victory cards. Just get rid of this and have a quick look. So England do. England have actually almost all of their scorecards once they finish owning and controlling all of this. Russia do. Fair play to them. Ottomans certainly do not. The Mughals and Bachmanis do, and the Mamluks do not, actually. What a shame for them. Spain certainly don't. Denmark, far from it. Okay, well, with this knowledge in mind, we are going to go out of sync, it seems, actually. 948 100. Could well be that we'll get a rehost for that. Just shy of 1750 when we would be enjoying our next round of victory cards. Okay, it looks like we are going to rehost, so I'm going to put up our lovely splash screen and we shall be back in just a few minutes to find out who gets victory cards on who where. We'll be right back.